Everybody out there, how you doing? This is Two Men in a Bible today, and we are going on TV, Joel, right?
That's the plan. His name is Jeff.
My name is Jeff, and his name
is Joel.
Joel. So Joel and Jeff are the two men, and
we do have a Bible.
Our anchor is the Bible, yes.
So.
And we've been doing radio for a long time, Joel. A number of years, if you count our
previous
predecessor show.
Yeah, we were known as the three guys from North Dakota. We're minus one of those guys at the moment,
right.
But
and that was great fun. We were on about 10 stations radio, and branched out to about 11 or 12 by the end. And we did everyday topics for everyday people.
Yeah,
and
we were on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah,
so
brought the Bible.
One show a week on the other.
One show a week. Yeah,
yeah, it's an hour-long show.
And now we've been blessed to do. We kind of picked it up again with Joel here and myself with KFLK
in
radio,
Minot.
and we've been so appreciative of Calvary Chapel Church, who's really helped us out. I've been thankful for the support I've had as a pastor at Living Word Lutheran Church in Minot.
Just across the street.
And I've been thankful for you, Joel, driving all the way from Park River, North Dakota, where we met, 40 plus years ago. And today we have with us, to help us launch to our next stage of this ministry, TV. We're calling it TV, but
we're calling it TV.
I guess nowadays you have to say YouTube, you have to say Facebook Live, you have to say
X,
Rumble, you have to say
Rumble.
X. So
Truth Social.
But so because of all that, we've got somebody with way more brains than we have put together. Our tech man, Jason.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Jason is Snurdly 2.0, and
you guys give me way too much credit. Way too much credit.
So he's pulling the knobs and setting the cameras and the mics and getting it all, really helping us out. So thank you, all of you listeners too, who have been with us, all three of you.
Yeah, all three of you.
We don't even know how many listeners we have, but whether it's 3 or 3,000 or 300, we are just very thankful that you've listened to us. We hope that we're...
Or 3 million, Jeff.
Or 3 million. Yeah, if it's that, we're thankful either way, But so we're taking the plunge here, along with the fact that we'll give a little plug for KFLOC at Calvary, the radio station here.
KFLK.
KFLK.
And it's now
88.1.
88.1. It was 95.9. Now it's 88.1. And they're going to 100,000 watts, which is like over 100-mile radius around Minot. So
120 miles.
120 miles. So that's almost to Bismarck, or it is to Bismarck.
It's on the northern part of Bismarck,
Williston,
from what I understand, and
Rugby.
close to Williston, way past Rugby.
So tell your friends out there and your family that live in the hinterlands around Minot, within 120 miles,
and even
up into Canada. Yeah, they're going big.
Yeah.
So, well.
And we're going worldwide here because we're going on to YouTube.
Yeah. You just got to love that word. Everybody wants that word when they're in radio, right?
Worldwide.
It's kind of like in politics when, when it's campaign season. You notice that all the Republicans, whether they're liberal or conservative, everybody wants the word conservative.
Oh yeah,
I'm a conservative now because I'm campaigning, or I'm for Trump now, even though I've never been for him before.
Yeah, we now have to add the word ultra conservative.
Ultra, yeah. Ultra is for the guys that are truly conservative. But anyway, hey, our topic that we're going to kick off our TV show with is called In the Beginning. So in the beginning, of course, we're going to start right at the beginning of the Bible, Adam and Eve and the serpent. So we're just going to slither right onto this topic, Joel. And it's kind of
the one note, folks, we have on this show.
It's in a very disgusting way, right?
Yes.
Joel, why is in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then we get to Adam and Eve and the serpent or the snake? Why is that such a disgusting thought?
Well, number one, he was... listen to this word.
Okay.
In chapter 3, it starts off with, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. So right from the beginning, we find out that this serpent is not.
And that craftiness was used in not a very. It was used in a very disgusting way.
Very disgusting.
Because he
lied. He started off lying directly to Eve
about what God said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't tell the truth at all. He actually called God a liar. But, I mean, it didn't say those words.
You think about it.
This is what he said in verse 4. And the serpent said to the woman, "You surely shall not die." God said in chapter 2, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, "From any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat from it, you shall surely die."
Okay.
And then he goes on to say, "You shall surely not die."
Yes. So we got two things going on there, right? Yep. We got that you shall not eat. And you got to pay close attention to that, folks, because God actually said, "You shall not eat from that tree."
Yes. Yeah.
In effect, it was. And so there's a lie related to that, and then there's a lie related to you shall surely die.
Yep.
So what are those lies?
Well, I mean, again, let's read Genesis 2:17. "But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat." I mean, it's as clear as it can be.
Yeah.
There is a side note here. That word literally means to eat from it. So in other words, we're not to eat of that fruit. And by the way, the Bible does not say that it's an apple.
It's not. Yeah, but I've got a book on my shelf at the church that says shows it as an apple. It has a picture.
Oh yeah, we see that picture all the time. It's an apple tree, but it does not say that it's an apple. It simply says, "From any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat." It doesn't say what kind of a tree it is, other than it is known as the tree of good and evil.
Now, after get
the knowledge of good and evil.
Knowledge of good and evil. Yep. So, in a little bit, let's flesh out the lies first.
Okay.
But then I'd like to get to, what does he mean by knowledge of good and evil? I think that's pretty large concept. So the one lie is what? What was one lie?
Well, first of all, he goes and he says, "Did indeed God say, 'You shall not eat from any tree of the garden'?" He starts off with a statement that isn't true, because like our society today, he uses just a phrase that God says and turns it into a lie because of the way he said it.
Yeah.
God did, in fact, say, "You shall not eat from this one tree," but he didn't say, "You shall not eat from any tree of the garden." He didn't say that.
Yeah.
And yet he made it sound like that's what God did.
And I think of, to this day, Joel, I mean, every human being, I think that is probably arguably our weakest point when it comes to lying, because we can resist and deny and identify an outright, blatant, flat-out lie, right?
Yep.
But it's those ones that just kind of come close to the truth, or maybe even have a little bit of truth in them, and they're just kind of. That's the disgusting part, I think, of this story.
Have you noticed? And I know you have, but when news people are sharing a story, a lot of times they will take a single phrase out of a sentence and make a big deal out of that phrase. Or a person uses a wrong word.
Yeah.
Or spells potato wrong. I mean,
I'll give you an example right now. We're in campaign season in North Dakota here, and it's a big deal because there's a whole slew of conservative challengers going against what we would call rhinos, or more liberal or kind of fake
Rhino
Republicans.
Stands for Republicans in name only.
And now our mailboxes are getting full of this kind of deception. against a number of people, but the big one, of course, is the Becker versus Fedorchak campaign. Anyway, one word and I'll just name the Brighter Future Alliance, which is, I think, a slithering marketing company. They are taking and one word, defund. So they accuse these legislators who have voted no on budget increases, like the conservative ones that want to actually lower the budget, like the platform says we do. That's what we do.
Right.
We lower spending. So you get these huge budget increases. If you vote no on the budget increase, now the ad says that you want to defund that thing, whether it be a budget for the law enforcement or for a college or whatever.
For the border.
So if you think, well, it's padded a bit, like one time I had that done to me by this slithering Brighter Future Alliance, and they accused me of wanting to defund law enforcement and colleges. And I remember, no, not National Guard. I'm sorry, it was National Guard. Well, it was padded with a multi-million-dollar museum.
Okay.
Well, when you're already bloated, it's okay to say no to a multi-million-dollar museum and send it back to the committee to redo. That's an example in our world, in our everyday life that people face. So people are fooled, just like Eve is fooled. And, he wants to defund. Then they get rid of people that way. They get rid of, in elections.
These are honest lies. I mean, honest lies. I know that
really
sounds
lying.
strange, but they know full well that they're lying about that individual, but they also know that the person did, in fact, vote against that bill.
Well, and they play on people's built-in ignorance. We're all ignorant. I don't mean that as insult, but I think all of us are at some level ignorant in the sense of not knowing the whole thing. We don't know everything, so they can use that against us. That's very misleading.
That's why, Jeff,
evil.
I really believe it should always, always, always be one single item.
Single subject.
Single subject.
Well, actually, the Constitution says it's supposed to be. It's already in the Constitution, and that's why we got sued. That's why in the last session we got sued. But anyway, before we're in the ditch too far. That's a really good example.
By the way, folks, that's what we do all the time.
We go in the ditch.
Jeff and I are there regularly.
Our steering wheel is very loose, right?
Yeah.
You never know where you're going. What's the other lie, Joel, then? So this one, I think people can really relate to this one. And it's good to talk about and reveal, because if we're aware of it, that's when you can become a better discerner of the truth, which is really what the ultimate goal here, right, is God's truth.
Well, he claims, God said, in the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die. And Satan says, no, you're not going to die. You're just not going to die. I mean, God knows full well you're not going to die. Well, so she ate of the tree, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She didn't physically die that moment. And she then shared it with her husband because she didn't die, but her husband knew full well that she would die. And he ate it anyway, and he too then brought the curse on not just humankind, but on the entire earth.
Yeah.
On the entire earth.
You
folks.
think about that, the heavens and the earth that we see and experience every day, we're subject to
the curse,
the years and years of corruption and decay.
Yep.
That we experience.
Prior to his eating of this fruit, there was no decay.
Right.
There was no death. There was no corruption of any kind. There probably wasn't such a thing as a carnivore. Even though those creatures existed,
that came later,
those creatures existed, but they
didn't eat them.
changed.
Yeah.
They changed.
I always wonder, do you think got along pretty well with the animals, or because the animals are pretty skittish around humans, and I wonder.
Well,
Did
this
that-
is just a Joel Hilden thought.
Yeah, give me
so-
the Joel Hilden theology.
Yeah, this is. I'm not. I don't have.
Inquiring minds want to know. Joel.
I don't have scripture on this necessarily, but I sort of do, because what we're talking about right now is this very fact that Eve was talking to a snake. And we think that's kind of strange, and we think that's weird, but it's a real possibility that humans were able to communicate with the animals, and the animals were able to communicate with the humans. And
Not
and I-
necessarily verbally, but
I think verbally.
Oh, you think verbally?
Yeah, I really do.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I really,
wow.
really
that
do.
stretches my brain a little
Yeah,
bit. but-
no, let me explain why I'm saying that. It's
Yeah.
because she is actually talking to a snake, and the snake is actually talking to her.
Okay.
And they are communicating to
Yeah.
each other word for word here.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
nothing in the scriptures teaches us that this was weird, that this was strange, that this was abnormal for Eve
Yeah, it
to
doesn't
be
say things like, and she was shocked to hear the snake
Yeah.
talk or something
Right,
like that. It was
right.
like just a natural part
just
of the
a
story.
natural
But
part of
that's
the
an interesting part.
natural part of the day.
Yeah.
And so why I'm sharing that with you is that later on in the scriptures found in chapter 3, actually, we find out that God is looking for Adam and Eve, and they have sewn fig leaves to cover their private parts. And the reason they're covering their private parts is because they now know they
Yeah.
are naked, as compared to prior to that, it was no big deal that they were naked.
So that gets to back to the knowledge of good and evil.
Yes.
Then is that really what's going on there? That now that they've sinned, they're aware of more in terms of good and evil. How does that fit, or does it fit with the figs, covering themselves with fig leaves? They're ashamed
Very ashamed.
because now they know what they've done.
Yep.
What does that relate to? Why God didn't want them to eat from that tree? That knowledge of
Well,
good and
one of
evil.
the things that happened to them, in my opinion, again, is that they became very ashamed. Number one, because they knew they went against God. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
But not only did that happen, but what also happened is they removed themselves from the presence of God. I mean, they knew that God walked with them in the garden every single day.
Okay.
They knew that God would walk with them one day, very shortly, in the cool of the day, it says, and that because that was their practice. And now all of a sudden they're naked. They know they're naked. There was nothing even thought about before that moment, and now all of a sudden they're ashamed.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's all about nakedness per se, as much as it is about being ashamed of what they've done.
I mean, that would be worth studying, and I don't know that I could even speak intelligently exactly to that right now, but it seems that there is a connection
There is.
between the knowledge in good and evil and the fact of their awareness that they could see themselves differently now. And because, I mean, the Bible, if I might say this, Joel, and I'd like to know your opinion about this. This sin demonstrates the difference between a man and a woman, I think, as well. And here's what I mean by that. Later in the New Testament, in 1 Timothy, you see where God says, in fact, as the reason why men are supposed to lead the family or in the church, and the whole authority piece there. When God says it, He gives a reason. He says, because Eve was deceived. So I see that as different than Adam. Both of them sinned.
Paul sees it very different.
What's that?
Paul sees it very different.
But I think that how men and women sin is actually a little bit different too.
That's what I'm trying
I think
to say
women
is-
are prone to being deceived. So in a sense, it's not that they're faultless, but there is a deception there that I wonder if Eve, first there was that that lie, that subtle lie. And then there was the doubt, are you really going to die? And in that deception, you can see why Paul wrote what he did, because, if a woman is leading a church and is being deceived, she's leading people away without even really
Realizing that she's doing it.
She's not like doing it on purpose. Whereas Adam, on the other hand, you can throw a 2x4 across his head to get him to repent, because he fully knew what he was doing.
Yes, he did.
So Adam's sin seems to be a little bit different. That there's the line, and it's I'm going to cross it. I don't know what motivated him, but he knew what he was doing.
We know for sure when Paul writes about this that God sees Eve's sin differently than he sees Adam's sin. They are two different kinds of sin. They're both sin.
Right.
Both sin. So please do not misunderstand this.
Right.
But Adam's sin is what brought the curse, not Eve's sin.
Right.
I know that sounds
Right.
strange, but that is the facts. And that's why Jesus had to be born of a virgin woman. Because sin carries down through the man, not through the woman.
Yeah. In fact, there's a word for that's why if you're born, that means that's tied to the mother, the woman.
Okay.
You're born of a woman. You're not born of a man.
No.
But you're begotten of the Father.
Sure.
So even we, when we relate to being birthed by our fathers, we are begotten. That's kind of an interesting thing I learned one time.
We're not born of a father.
Yeah, so that's why Jesus was begotten, God's begotten Son.
Interesting.
Because it was of the Father. But he was born of a woman.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of difference there. Anyway, we're having a good time, aren't we?
I think so. Poor Jason over there. We don't even let Jason talk. Should we let Jason talk in this time?
As long as he doesn't deceive us.
I will do my best not.
I'm pretty well sure, knowing Jason,
That's not going to happen, folks.
There's not deception involved there.
Well, thank you for the credit there.
But when we're looking at this whole picture, we need to understand that they do, in fact, die that day. And that
day?
That day. And let me explain that statement to you.
Spiritually, you mean? Or,
well, it's more than that, because to God in Peter, book of 2 Peter, I think it is, chapter 3, to God a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. And we see that people in Adam's day, for example, Adam lived 950 years, I think it was. 930 years. 930 years. Noah lived 950 years. Methuselah lived 969 years. Jared lived 962 years. Lamech lived 777 years. Shem was right up there in the
can you
real
imagine
high number
what that must
years.
have been like?
Yeah, and the more, sometimes we see pictures of Noah, or we see pictures of of Methuselah. I messed up the camera.
Yeah, that's right. It's our first date on camera. Yeah.
We see these guys, pictures of them, of artists' renditions of them being really old, really old.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that Noah, when he was 600 years old, when he was building the ark, he looked like maybe a 40-year-old, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, he was in his youth at 600 years of age, because he lived to be 950 years. 350 years after the flood. Think about that, folks. We oftentimes have this Noah guy being so old and so rickety and crippled up, and that he could barely lift a 2x4, let alone the big things that needed to be carried. And
but back to the idea that Adam and Eve died that day.
So what I'm trying to say is that a human being never lives longer than 1,000 years. What I'm trying to say.
So when you say that are you saying then that the Bible is inferring that that day meant 1,000 years.
Yeah, up to 1,000
Up to
years.
1,000 years.
You
Oh,
can't live past
okay,
1,000
okay.
years. So they were living up to 950 years or
Okay,
930
but you're not
years.
talking about a 24-hour day
No,
there.
no,
Okay,
not
okay,
that.
okay.
Not in that case.
I see.
But on the other side of the coin, back to what you said, they did die spiritually that day.
They did die spiritually, and
Yep.
and the reason I was challenged by that is because I think we can easily come to an understanding that they had many kids. It wasn't just Cain and Abel and Seth.
Yeah.
It was they had many kids over all those years, and that helps explain
Where all
how the
wives
population
came.
could have
Yeah.
increased.
We don't ever hear about their children, their other children.
Right, who-
We don't hear about their daughters, and
Yeah.
all those things. And everybody
Right.
says, "Where did Cain get his wife? Where did
Yeah.
Seth
and that
get his
could have
wife?"
been 200 years later that
Yes,
she
yep.
was born.
Yeah.
And
Not that I agree with this book or disagree with this book, but there's a book called the Book of Enoch. Some say that the Book of Enoch was written like 200 BC. Some say that the Book of Enoch was written by 40 or 50 different authors. I'm not saying one way or the other. We went over our time.
we did, yeah.
So what do we do?
Okay. Well, Joe, finish your thought, and let's. Enoch said.
Enoch said that Adam and Eve had 147 children.
Okay.
We'll have to
Well, there
stop
you go,
there,
folks. We're going to leave you with, in the beginning, Adam and Eve had 147 children. Maybe. Hey, God bless you all. This has been Two Into the Bible, our first TV show.
Thanks.
See y'all. God bless.